One of the biggest names in college football over the last few years has been DJU Uiagalelei. Coming out of high school, he was a 5-star recruit and was in the same stratosphere as guys like Bryce Young. Both of these guys were supposed to take over in college football at some point, as Bryce Young was after Mac Jones and Tua, and DJ was going to be after Trevor Lawrence. Unfortunately, the two went on opposite paths. While Bryce became a number 1 overall pick, DJ ended up playing at 3 different schools, was never able to quite figure it out, and ultimately went undrafted in this year's draft class. Today, I want to talk about the entire DJU story, go through how he became a 5-star recruit, his crazy whirlwind college career, and why ultimately he went undrafted. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to DJ Uiagalelei. So in order to understand how DJ got to this point, we first need to go back in time. Again, I'm not going to say his last name a ton of times in this video, so you'll refer to him as DJU. He was born in Riverside, California in 2001, and this was to a family of Samoan descent. Because of that Samoan family and its values, he often found himself playing sports with other kids in Riverside, and he naturally gravitated towards playing 2 of them, football and baseball. Even as a kid, he was bigger than most everyone else his age, and his arm was just stronger than everyone else's. So those 2 sports made the most sense for him, and one recruiter on the West Coast said, quote, "There was talk that there's no way he's going to be able to stay at quarterback. He's going to put on weight and play offensive line." His little brother Matayo ended up also playing football and actually was a defensive end with Oregon. He ended up playing those sports so often as a kid though that he actually started to develop some arm issues in middle school and would not throw at all the entirety of his 8th grade season and would play wide receiver instead. But even before that, he was getting some serious college hype. As a 6th grader, he got his first scholarship offer, and it was from a Power 5 school, Indiana. When he finished his high school career, there were some people who thought that if he stuck it out with baseball, he'd be a first-round pick as an 18-year-old, but obviously, he ended up sticking it out with football. He ended up going to high school at the prestigious St. John Bosco School in Bellflower, California, and Bosco is a Catholic school known for producing elite athletes like Josh Rosen, Trent McDuffie, and Patrick Cowan. So, when he took over the reins as the starting quarterback in 2017, there were plenty of eyes on him. He was on the same team as future Ohio State lineman Wyatt Davis and Boise State running back George Holani, as well as quarterback Ray Al Mitchell. DJ ended up throwing for 2,900 yards and 31 touchdowns and only 2 picks as a sophomore, and also ran for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. He already had a list of pretty good scholarship offers by the time he was a sophomore, as Oregon offered him in 2017, followed by schools like Bama, Utah, Tennessee, and Cal. He ended up blowing up his junior season in 2018 though, as the SEC came after him. Florida, LSU, Florida State, Auburn, Texas, and Ohio State amongst others all went after him, and he ended up throwing for 3,300 yards with 48 touchdowns. He was named the USA Today High School Player of the Year, and by that point, he was considered the top quarterback recruit in the country for the class of 2020. He reportedly won a throwing competition against Justin Fields by throwing a football nearly 80 yards and hit a goalpost. Also, I want to mention it now, he's also related to the Maliava brothers. By his senior season though, he ended up committing to Clemson over both Oregon and USC, and the biggest factor in that decision was the faith of head coach Dabo Swinney. DJ said, quote, "My faith is important to me, and the first time I went out there was in June. That's what sold me. I didn't commit when I was out there, but that's when I told myself that's where I wanted to be." After DJ committed, he threw for 4,225 yards and 48 touchdowns as a senior, all while trying to get his teammates signed with other teams. His high school coach said, quote, "He's kind of a chip off the old block from his mom. She keeps him grounded, and it's not all about him. It's about the team, and his individual successes are going to be much more appreciated if he has the team's back." When he signed with Clemson in 2020, he was considered a 5-star recruit and the number 2 overall recruit in the entire country behind Bryce Young. Bryce was considered a dual-threat quarterback, and DJ was more of a pro-style quarterback. When he arrived at Clemson, he was set to be number 3 on the depth chart, as they had Tyson Pomachan and then obviously Trevor Lawrence. So how would he do at Clemson? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so DJ would actually get a chance to play his freshman year, as Trevor would fail a test. You know exactly what I mean by that. He ended up actually having to play against Boston College, and he brought them back from an 18-point deficit and threw for 342 yards and 2 touchdowns. He would stay the starter the following week against Notre Dame, but Clemson would lose in a thriller. He finished his freshman year 1-1 as a starter, with nearly 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no picks. When Trevor went first overall to the Jags in 2021, DJ would become Clemson's starting quarterback his true sophomore season. The hype for this guy was unreal, and they were ranked inside the top 5, and he already had NIL deals in place with places like Bojangles and Dr. Pepper. The hype may have gone to his head though, because he instantly played poorly in their loss to Georgia to start the year. Georgia won 10-3, and the only touchdown was a pick 6 that DJ threw. He would kind of bounce back, as Clemson would go 10-3 during the 2021 season, but he only threw for 2,200 yards with 9 touchdowns and 10 picks. Clemson really won 10 games in spite of DJ, not because of him. The Tigers didn't end up winning the ACC championship game that year because they finished third behind Wake Forest and NC State, and Clemson didn't even go to that game. In 2022, he became the starter for Clemson once again, but things did not go all that much better. He started 13 games for Clemson, taking them to an 11-2 record, and he did improve, throwing for 2,500 yards with 22 touchdowns, but once Clemson got to the ACC championship game, he struggled. He ended up being benched for Cade Klubnik, who looked better than DJ did. Clemson ended up winning the ACC championship, and after the game, since he knew his spot was taken, DJ would enter the transfer portal looking for a new situation. He was considered a 4-star transfer prospect at quarterback, and despite having graduated, he still had a few years of eligibility left because of that 2020 season, and there was some legitimate smoke towards him going to Hawaii to play quarterback. That would have been cool. He was also drafted by the Dodgers in the 20th round of the MLB draft, so he could have decided to end his football career and go back to baseball, and honestly, in retrospect, he should have done that. But he'd end up signing with Oregon State for the 2023 season instead. Oregon State was coming off of a huge program rebuild, and they were under head coach Jonathan Smith, and they looked to make a push for a Pac-12 title game, despite in the previous year having some quarterback problems. DJ would immediately slide in and be their best option, and despite the hype there, he would continue to underdeliver. In his 4th season, he went 8-4 as the starter, throwing for 2,600 yards with 21 touchdowns and 7 picks, and honestly, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either, and it was actually a step back for Oregon State, who went 10-3 the previous season. And that's when he'd enter the portal again, right after it was clear that Jonathan Smith was leaving for Michigan State and taking Aiden Childs with him. This time, DJ was still considered a 4-star transfer quarterback recruit and the 13th best quarterback in the portal. He'd end up signing with Florida State to take over for Jordan Travis, who was drafted by the New York Jets. Yet, despite his underwhelming play over the last 4 years, there was for some reason a lot of hype for him going to Florida State, despite losing their top running back, some key offensive linemen, some really good defensive players, and also 3 of their best pass catchers, including second-round pick Keon Coleman. I guess the hype was purely because the team had gone 13-1 and won the ACC in 2023, so everyone just expected DJ to be plugged in and all of a sudden have superstar numbers. Well, all of this was ruined in week 0 against Georgia Tech in Ireland, as he was named the starter and threw for under 200 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions. They lost by way of a game-winning field goal, 24-21. They would lose their next 2 games against Boston College and Memphis too, and would start the season at 0-3. In his 4th start against Cal, Florida State would finally get their first win, but he would hurt his hand against SMU and was essentially benched after that. During those 5 games, DJ threw for 1,000 yards with 4 touchdowns and 6 picks, and he only completed 54% of his passes. That meant he was averaging just 200 yards a game, less than a touchdown, and only completing 1 of every 2 passes. And add on to that, he was also averaging over an interception. His mobility was definitely not as good as it had used to been either. His arm had looked shot, his confidence looked shot. It was time to let the poor guy just leave the field and get his stuff together. He officially declared for the 2025 NFL Draft in late December, but in that year alone, he had destroyed whatever draft stock he had left. He went from being a projected first-round pick after his freshman season to people saying he should have declared after his season at Oregon State, and then he was blamed for all of Florida State's problems. Really, we can say that this last year is the reason why DJ didn't end up getting drafted, but there was always warning signs over his 4 years of football that he wasn't going to be as good as advertised. He ended up having that one really good game against Notre Dame in 2020, but other than that, he never really popped off the page or had a moment where I thought this guy was really all that legit. It's easier in hindsight to say that he should have played baseball, which could have kept him healthier in the long term, but he wanted to play football, and he played it for too long. As I said, he ended up going undrafted in the 2025 NFL Draft, but he was picked up by Coach Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers. They already have Trey Lance, Taylor Heineke, and of course Justin Herbert, so DJ's path to a roster spot is slim to none, but if he can find a way to be a practice squad player, I think that would be a huge success. Again, this guy was the top quarterback in his high school class arguably, and many thought he had a higher ceiling than guys like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud at the time. Unfortunately, because of all this, DJ just making the practice squad would be a huge win. And honestly, at this point, I feel bad for the guy and I'm rooting for him. I really felt sorry for him in those first couple of games for Florida State this season, as I think he was truly trying to do his best, but he just didn't have it. He had a terrible supporting cast, and everything was going against him. Some thought he could move to maybe tight end or defensive end in the league, but he is stuck to playing quarterback, and at nearly 6'4" and 250 pounds, he's going to try to make it. So yeah, today we talked about what happened to DJU Uiagalelei. If you're a Clemson, Florida State, or Oregon State fan, give me your thoughts down below why this guy didn't work out, and let me know which other player, quarterback, or undrafted player I could cover next. Also, before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out more of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.